How often do you leave a conversation and begin replaying it before you have even reached the door? One sentence, the sound of your voice, the expression on someone's face, and suddenly, an ordinary moment begins to feel like evidence. Maybe you talked too much. Maybe you were too quiet. Maybe you shared something you should have kept to yourself. So you return to the conversation, word by word, as though there had been one correct way to be. And somehow, you missed it. And perhaps this does not begin afterward. Perhaps it happens while you are still in the room. Someone asks how you are, and before the real answer can arrive, you have already replaced it. I'm fine. Someone says something that hurts, and you soften your reaction so they will not feel uncomfortable. You want to say no, but you hear yourself saying, "Of course." You want to speak, but the thought passes through a small, invisible checkpoint somewhere inside you. Is this too much? Is this strange? Will they still like me after I say it? And so, before the words reach the room, you edit them. You make them smaller, safer, easier for someone else to receive. Sometimes, you even edit your joy. You begin talking about something you love, and halfway through, you notice they are not as interested as you hoped. So your voice becomes quieter. You shorten the story. You say, "It's not a big deal." And something that felt alive in you only a moment ago is folded away before anyone has the chance to reject it. Maybe you learned that excitement could be embarrassing, that sadness could be inconvenient, that anger could make people pull away, that needing something could make you difficult. So somewhere along the way, you began carrying an invisible red pen, changing your tone, removing a feeling, rewriting a reaction, until the version of you that entered the room was careful, pleasant, and almost impossible to misunderstand, but also a little harder to find. And maybe no one notices. They may call you easygoing, kind, calm, someone who never causes problems. You know how to read a room. You notice when someone's mood changes. You know when to speak, when to step back, when to make things easier. You have become very good at protecting the atmosphere. But sometimes you protect it by slowly disappearing from it. You are still there. You answer. You listen. You smile. But part of your attention is standing outside the moment, watching you, checking your face, measuring your voice, making sure you are not becoming too visible. And that can be exhausting, even when nothing terrible happened. The conversation may have been pleasant. Everyone may have smiled. And still, you return home feeling tired without knowing why. Maybe it is because you were not only having the conversation, you were also managing yourself inside it. And just for this moment, you do not have to solve that. You do not have to explain it. You do not have to decide whether you were right or wrong, too much or not enough. Maybe the conversation is over. Maybe the room is already far behind you. And maybe you do not have to carry every word home. You can leave the silence where it happened. You can stop turning the moment over until every edge begins to hurt. You were allowed to pause. You were allowed to be unsure. You were allowed to sound like yourself without making every word perfect. And the part of you that still keeps watching is not your enemy. It learned to notice every change, every colder tone, every small distance. It learned to stay alert long before you knew how to ask it to rest. So you do not have to fight it. You can notice that this moment is not a test. There is no perfect expression you need to hold. No correct sentence you need to find. No easier version of you that must appear before you are allowed to relax. And perhaps next time, instead of asking, "Did they like me?" another question can arrive. Was there room for me there? Room for my silence? Room for my uncertainty? Room for the part of me that did not know how to make everything easier? And if there was not, that does not mean you failed. Sometimes a space is too narrow for a whole person to enter. Being yourself does not mean being completely unguarded. It may only mean not turning against yourself the moment someone else feels distant. And perhaps you can begin gently. One honest sentence spoken in your real voice. One pause you do not rush to fill. One feeling you allow to remain without correcting it. You may still hear the old questions. Was I too much? Was I not enough? But perhaps now, another thought can stay beside them. Maybe the conversation did not need a perfect version of me. Maybe I can be careful without disappearing. Maybe I can protect myself without editing myself away. And just for now, nothing needs to be polished. Nothing needs to be hidden. Nothing needs to be made smaller. For these few moments, you can put the red pen down. Let the page remain a little unfinished. And let yourself remain exactly where you are, without editing one more thing.